Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. It is Sunday, April 7th, 2024, and we are live. We are here for part two of this discussion, this segment that I'm doing, dealing with the Breakfast Club interview that Black conservative grifter Candace Owens did on March 21st, 2024. Welcome to the African History Network show. Hope everybody's doing well today. It is Sunday, April 7th, 2024, and we are live. I promised you when we did part one of this discussion, fact-checking the lies that Candace Owens told on the March 21st, 2024 Breakfast Club interview. I told you there were so many that we would do a part two. So a lot of people learned from the part one discussion that we did. And part of that discussion dealt with the man in the house rule and the lies she was telling about the man in the house rule coming from the welfare system. And a lot of that was enforced at the state level as opposed to coming from the federal. This is part two. Part two, we're going to focus in on her comments surrounding Donald Trump and how everyone, we were all better under Donald Trump. We were all better under the Trump administration. And one of the things she cited was she said she's voting for Donald Trump in 2024 because the economy was better under Donald Trump as opposed to under the Biden-Harris administration, which is blatantly false. Okay, so we're going to go through and fact check that, provide you with the evidence, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. And one of the things that Trump usually does is takes credit for what other people did, Donald Trump inherited a pretty healthy economy from the Obama administration, Obama-Biden administration, but never gives them credit for it. We're going to show you the evidence of that. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. All right, so let's jump into this discussion here. I want to we're going to pick it up from the interview that she did with Charlemagne the God, DJ Envy, and Just Hilarious. And one of the problems with this interview is they didn't have anybody there to fact check her real time. They largely did not push back on any of these lies that she told. So we're going to pick this up from about the 20-minute, 20-second mark, okay? And she also talks about her love for Vivek Ramaswamy, who was running for president on the Republican to get the Republican nomination. Conspiracy theory, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is against affirmative action but took advantage of affirmative action. Imagine that. Let's go to this clip.
It's a baby shower. So is this the reason why I haven't really heard you pushing people to vote for any particular candidate this go around?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very clear about the fact I let everything play out, but I absolutely love Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously, he's not running anymore, but his ideas and his laser sharp focus on what the actual issues were, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I'm obviously voting for Trump. You know, we were all doing better under Trump. It's that simple. I don't care what else they have to say, the libels, the smears. I get it. You do it to me. So I just don't even pay attention. I actually find it to be quite boring now, you know?
Mm-hmm. What economically, what were the reasons? Because, you know, you said that, you didn't like that Republicans were giving out money during 2020.
Both. They were just giving out money during COVID. It was crazy.
But that's what a lot of people loved. They loved the stimulus checks. They loved the PPP. So when you say you were doing better under Trump, that's what people point to. But look at the circumstances it took for that to happen. We don't want to have to go through another pandemic in order to get that money.
Yeah, but the point is that should provide you a lesson how the government works, because people weren't even thinking ahead. You're like, yeah, I'm getting this free check. So I'm not going to work. Again, incentivizing poor behavior. What ended up happening was a lot of the mom and pop stores closed, right? A lot of businesses actually had to fold because they couldn't sustain it under the economic environment. They just couldn't thrive. Literally, employees did not want to go to work. It was crazy. And so what ends up happening is the individuals get weaker and the corporations got bigger, right? Only the corporations could have survived in that environment, which is what unfortunately ended up happening. And then we put our own selves on the hook to be taxed into oblivion, to keep paying into this ridiculous thing that we agreed to pay into. It would have been much better for us to instead say, I'm happy to work. I don't want your small check. I want you to stop taking tax dollars from me. You know, shrink government, don't make it bigger. That always has to be the economic narrative. If you want to make government bigger, you are taking from me. Government does not make money. We make money, right? Government can only take money. So when you're advocating for more government solutions, you are literally advocating for the government to come into your check and take more money from you.
Lord, that makes sense. But how were people better under Trump, though? Like what are some things that you can point to?
Well, I mean, like I said, common sense. Everybody was living better under Trump, but just in terms of the environment for people that were entrepreneurial, definitively one of the first things he did was he started slashing regulations, like, slashing these barriers that prevent people who want to go into business from starting a business because they learned that there's all of these government agencies that are, you got to get this in place, you got to get this in place, you have to get, this license. That's government agencies that are actually standing between you and starting a company. And so on his very first day, he was just like cutting regulations left and right, saying, throw this one out, throw this one out, throw this one out, which freed up the markets. At the end of the day, what I am is I'm a free market capitalist. Free the markets, allow people to compete fairly, stop allowing the government to stop people or, de-incentivize them from creating new jobs. I'll give you an example. A cousin of mine wanted to start a food truck. Great, awesome, love for you to do that. And he looked into like how many certifications and barriers there were before he could actually start the food truck. That is the government growing powerful. Essentially, you have to have money or you have to know somebody to play the game for you to be able to start from nothing and make something of yourself.
All right, that's about all of that nonsense I can take. Okay, so let's go through and look at this and break this down because she just told just a bunch of lies here and nobody there really pushed back on her. And the other thing that I find interesting is that when you look here at, so if you go to their YouTube channel, Breakfast Club on YouTube, right? You look at this video, it's been viewed 2.3 million times. It came out March 21st. She did the show March 21st, 2024. You go here and you look at who works on the show. Executive producer, Eddie F. You got senior video director, Nick Ciafalo, video editor, social media manager, producer, Taylor Haynes, producer, Brandon Tago, producer, Samantha Wilson, board operator producer, writer producer, Big Mac, podcast producer. Nobody fact checked what she said. Nobody did like research real time to push back on the lies she was telling. So compare this to what we do here, because I don't have anybody do research for me. I don't have people to go get me coffee and all types of things like that. But we do a better job here than they do there, and they got all those people working for them. I don't do this full time. All right, so let's look at the first article here. She talked about deregulation. Donald Trump was deregulating first day in office. He was changing this, changing that. Yeah, he was. Let's look at this. This is one now, when he first got in office, this is one of the things I talked about. This article here from NBCnews.com is from, this is from April 3rd, 2017. Now, he took the oath of office January 20th, 2017. April 3rd, 2017. NBCnews.com. Trump pulls back Obama-era protections for women workers. Trump pulls back Obama-era protections for women workers. Tuesday's Equal Pay Day is the perfect time to draw attention to Donald Trump's move to roll back protections for women workers, activists say. Okay, so, and here he is. This is from, this picture here is from March 27. President Trump, flanked by Representatives Liz Cheney, who's not going to vote for Donald Trump in 2024, and Virginia Fox, Representative Virginia Foxx in North Carolina signs a series of bills in the Roosevelt Room of the White House. Okay, so here's what happened. With little notice, Donald Trump recently signed an executive order that advocates say rolls back hard-fought victories for women in the workplace. Okay, now who would have thought Mr. Grab 'em by the vagina would do something like this? Tuesday's Equal Pay Day, which highlights the wage disparity between men and women, is the perfect time to draw more attention to the president's action, activists say. On March 27th, 2020, Trump revoked March 27, 2021, Trump revoked the 2014 Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces order then President Barack Obama put in place to ensure that companies with federal contracts comply with 14 labor and civil rights laws. So this is the type of deregulation that Candace Owens is talking about. Okay. This was an Obama era policy, and Trump revoked it his third full month in office. Okay. This policy ensured that companies with federal contracts comply with 14 labor and civil rights laws. The Fair Pay Order was put in place after a 2010 Government Accountability Office, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office investigation showed that companies with rampant violations were being awarded millions in federal contracts. In an attempt to keep the worst violators from receiving taxpayer dollars, the Fair Pay Order included two rules that impacted women workers: white women workers, African-American women workers, Asian American, Latino. Now, as we've talked about previously on this show, and we're going to get deep into this because you've heard me talk about before, and you've heard me on Roland Martin Unfiltered discuss this. In the first 2 years of the Trump administration, there were 3 government shutdowns. There were 3 government shutdowns in the first 2 years of the Trump administration because he could not govern. And the Republicans in the House and the Senate. Remember, the Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the House and the White House. Okay, all 3 branches of the legislative branch and the White House. And there were 3 government shutdowns in the first 2 years. That second government shutdown, that was November 2018 into January 2019, that was the most devastating. We're going to talk about that. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. The Fair Pay Order included 2 rules that impacted women workers. Now, African Americans are 18% of federal employees. African Americans are 18% of federal employees. And then when it comes to federal contractors, we are disproportionately represented. And I think I can't remember, it was 18% or something like that. So when you talk about changing a policy like this for federal employees, or in this case, federal contractors, that disproportionately hurts African Americans or African American women. And what happens to African American women happens to the African American family and communities as a whole. The Fair Pay Order included 2 rules that impacted women workers: paycheck transparency and a ban on forced arbitration clauses for sexual harassment. A ban on forced arbitration clauses for sexual harassment, sexual assault, or discrimination claims. Okay, so why would Donald Trump, a good upstanding American Christian who's selling $59.99 Trump Bibles, a man who was found liable of sexual assault against E. Jean Carroll in a civil lawsuit in New York, why would he do something like this? He talked about, when he ran for president, he talked about how much he loved women, how he was going to be so good for women. He did help overturn Roe versus Wade, but that's another story. Paycheck transparency and a ban on forced arbitration clauses for sexual harassment, sexual assault, or discrimination claims. All right. So read the rest of this here. And let's see. Okay, Noreen Farrell, director of the anti-sex discrimination law firm Equal Rights Advocate, said Trump went, quote, on the attack against workers and taxpayers. Went on the attack against workers and taxpayers. Quote, we have an executive order that essentially forces women to pay to keep companies in business that discriminate against them with their own tax dollars, she said. It's an outrage. Okay. All right. So read the rest of this piece here from NBCnews.com. Trump pulls back Obama era protections for women workers. Okay. Trump pulls back Obama era protections for women workers. All right. And I'm going to post this link here. Now, a lot of this stuff people didn't know. Okay. Now, we reported on this when all this was happening, real time. We reported on all this at the African History Network. This is the type of research that we do here. Okay. All right. Let's continue. So you have that. Now, there was also a piece from I saw an article. There are numerous articles from different sources dealing with this. There was one from independent.co.uk dealing with this one right here. You could read this one. I'm not going to get deep into it. It's about the same thing. This is from Thursday, April 20th, 2017. Thursday, April 20th, 2017. Donald Trump signs order making it easier for men to sexually harass women at work and get away with it. It's a rollback of a number of Obama-era protections for women in the workplace. It's a rollback of it rolls back a number of Obama-era protections for women in the workplace. Remember, Donald Trump asked the question to African Americans, what the hell do you have to lose? I told you numerous times here on the show, the correct answer was everything. These included two rules that help protect female employees: wage transparency and a ban on forced arbitration clauses for sexual harassment, known as cover-up clauses by critics. The wage transparency requirement forced companies with federal contracts to provide each employee with a wage statement making clear the rate of pay, the number of hours worked, the total amount of pay, and specific additions or deductions. It was one of the few ways to help ensure, let's zoom in on this. It was one of the few ways to help ensure women were being paid as much as their male colleagues. Okay, and then Noreen Farrell from the law firm Equal Rights Advocates is cited again here. They cite the article from NBCnews.com. Women in America currently earn on average 83 cents for every dollar earned by men, according to the latest analysis by the Economic Policy Institute. You know, for African American women, it fluctuates between 61 cents on the dollar and 67 cents on the dollar. You have what's called Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Black Women's Equal Pay Day, where it takes the average African American woman 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white male made the previous 12 months. That's called Black Women's Equal Pay Day. All right. Now, when we talk about the economy, right, there is, let's look at this here, because people operate under this myth that Donald Trump created a great economy. But that's not what the data shows. Okay, that's actually false. Donald Trump did not create a great economy. Donald Trump largely inherited a great economy from President Barack Obama, but does not give Obama any credit for inheriting a great economy. Okay. And this is often the case where African Americans do the hard lifting, they do the hard work, and then white people come in many times and take credit for what they did. Okay. The Obama Biden administration saved America from economic collapse. The Biden-Harris administration saved America from economic collapse because President Biden inherited a bad economy from Trump, partly because of COVID-19. The other part is because Trump was incompetent. But let's look at this article here, NBCnews.com. Data show Trump did not build a great economy. He inherited it. Data show Trump did not build a great economy. He inherited it. The average quarterly economic growth under Donald Trump, 2.5%, was almost exactly what it was under President Obama in the second term, 2.4%. Now, this is an article from August 23rd, 2020. Okay, August 23rd, 2020. So this is 3 months before the November 2020 election. Okay, with that Biden-Harris won. President Donald Trump's campaign speeches can careen into many topics, but his primary appeal continues to be that he built, quote, the greatest economy that we've had in our history, end quote, the greatest economy that we've had in our history, end quote, before the COVID-19 pandemic, and he can do it again. These are the lies he was telling. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll said, okay, let's deal with the polls. Let's skip over that back in 2020. But the real story of the Trump economy and the president's role in building it is not so simple. If you compare key economic indicators from Barack Obama's second term in office to the first 3 years of Trump's time, that is before the pandemic hit, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the data show a continuation of trends. The data show a continuation of trends, not a dramatic shift. It suggests Donald Trump did not build something new. Rather, he inherited a pretty good situation. Donald Trump trashed the economy. Okay. He trashed the job market, all of that when he was running. Then he inherited a healthy job market. And if you remember, Sean Spicer was Trump's first White House press secretary. Okay. And when the first jobs numbers came out, I think it was for either February or March, like that first full month, they took credit for it and said how great the numbers were. And the reporters were saying, wait a second, you were saying how the unemployment numbers were false under the Obama administration, how they were reporting false unemployment numbers. You're using the same methodology to report the unemployment numbers now. So how is it now the unemployment numbers are real, but under the Obama administration, they were false? These are the games these people play. Okay, let's continue. Now, start with the broadest measure of economic health, gross domestic product, GDP. In 2016, Trump said he was unhappy that the country's economic growth rate was under 3% a year, under 3% a year. Trump said he thought the economy could grow at better than 4%, better than a 4% annual rate. Okay, and they have a chart here as well breaking this down, running on the economy quarterly GDP growth. Okay, gross domestic product, which is the total of the value of the goods and services produced by a company, but it also includes income as well, income of the people in the United States as well. But the numbers show that average quarterly economic growth under Trump, 2.5%, was almost exactly what it was under Obama in the second term, 2.4%. Other than the overall similarity, two things jump out of those numbers. First, Trump did not get near his 4% figure. Okay, 4% GDP growth. Second, the growth that began in Obama's second term, and essentially continued under Trump was enough to create an economy that even Trump believes was great. In other words, there might be something to be said for slow, steady growth over a prolonged period of time. Job numbers for Obama and Trump show a similar story. Okay, so when we look at the job numbers, Donald Trump rightly takes credit for having unemployment during his presidency. In December 2019, the unemployment rate was a scant 3.5%, the lowest it had been in 50 years. Okay, so this is under Donald Trump. but he inherited a largely healthy economy from Obama Biden. Now, if we look here at this graphic, new jobs per month, the second term of President Barack Obama, because remember, when Obama came into office, the economy was losing 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 jobs a month. Okay. Then they had a massive stimulus package. The economy starts getting better. And it was the Obama Biden administration that saved the economy from collapse. They also saved the auto industry as well by bailing out General Motors and Chrysler. The Obama Biden administration, they saved the auto industry. Okay, so second term of President Obama, they're averaging 215,000 new jobs a month. Through 2019, okay, when you look at Trump, he's averaging 182,000 jobs a month, job creation. However, as good as that, so the article goes on to say, okay, it talks about the December 2019, the unemployment rate was a scant 3.5%, the lowest it had been in 50 years. Okay, that's true. That's under Trump. However, as good as that number was, when Trump took office, the unemployment rate was already at 4.7%. Okay. When Donald Trump took the oath of office, the unemployment rate was already at 4.7%, which is a relatively low unemployment rate. That figure is quite low by historical standards, lower than all of the 1980s, as well as most of the 1990s and 2000s. In December 2017, it was the lowest number. In December 2017, it was the lowest the number had been since the Great Recession. In fact, President Barack Obama saw a much steeper drop in unemployment in his second term, a 3.3% drop in the rate than Trump did in his first 3 years, a decline of 1.2%, or 1.2 points, I should say, decline of 1.2 points. So read the rest of this as well. Okay. So this argument that Trump was better for the economy than Obama is a lie. Donald Trump benefited from the President Barack Obama economy and takes credit for it. Like he created something. No, he didn't. It's just like products that he hawks and sells and just slaps his name on them. Like he created it or something like that. No, it's like licensing. Okay. Like him slapping his name on the side of a building or something like that. All right. So take a look at this article here from NBCnews.com. All right. Now we're going to look at the criminal justice system also, because that's very interesting there as well. All right. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. I want you to go read these articles also, because proper documentation ends all conversation. I want to look at, let's look at this here. When Donald Trump ran, you remember you had the whole Blue Lives Matter. You remember they said that they were going to unleash the police, and Donald Trump ran on the platform saying that police needed more power. They needed less restrictions on them. Who was Donald Trump's first attorney general? His first attorney general was Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III. Jeff Sessions. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who was the U.S. senator, one of the U.S. senators from Alabama. Each state has 2 senators, right? Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III was against criminal justice reform. And there's a number of things that he did, but let's look at this here. One of the first things he did was reverse an Obama era policy dealing with privatized prisons, but also reversing a 2013 initiative from the Department of Justice under Attorney General Eric Holder, which backed off of charging people, low level nonviolent drug offenders, charging them with the harshest sentences. Okay, he backed off of that, and he said that we need to take a hands-off approach to policing. Okay, he talked about how having more oversight on police, things like this would hurt the morale of police. All right, now I want to let me pull up this article here, and also I'm going to show you some slides from a presentation that I did back in 2017 called African American Resistance under the Era of Donald Trump, Voter Suppression, Reparations, and How Elections Have Consequences. And let me pull up this piece here. Okay, so let's look at what happened here. In 2016, the Obama-Biden administration announced that they were going to not renew contracts with privatized prison companies for federal prisons, right? And when that announcement was made, the day that announcement was made, the week that announcement was made, the stock price of privatized prisons took a big hit. Core Civic, which used to be Corrections Corporation of America, and Geo Group, okay, those stocks took a big hit. Now, Core Civic and Geo Group donated about $600,000 to Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and his transition committee. Then, when Trump gets in office, his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, revokes that initiative from the Eric Holder's Department of Justice, right? So what we see is the stock price of privatized prisons increases greatly. If we look at this article here from Forbes.com, prison stocks soar under Trump as Jeff Sessions okays private jails. Prison stocks soar, S-O-A-R, under Trump as Jeff Sessions okays private jails. All right, now, this is an article from February 24th, 2017. This is one of the first things Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III did as Attorney General. In the final months, the article says, in the final months of the Obama administration, the Justice Department announced it would end the use of private prisons because the war on drugs was declining under the Obama-Biden administration. And for each of the 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration, you had a decline in the U.S. prison population as well. Okay, the war on drugs was declining. In the final months of the Obama administration, the Justice Department announced it would end the use of private prisons. In the first month of the Trump administration, the rule was rescinded. In a memo signed February 21st, 2017, but released to the public late Thursday, the new U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded the order. Sessions decided not to phase out the use of private prisons by the federal government, and that bodes well for prison stocks. Okay, so they reversed it and said, we're going to use private prisons. When that announcement was made, the stock price of the private prison companies increased something like 98%. In August 2016, less than an hour after the news broke, shares of Geo Group and Core Civic, formerly known as Corrections Corporation of America. Now Core Civic is the largest owner-operator of privatized prisons in the country. When the Obama-Biden administration made this announcement in August of 2016, the stock prices of these privatized prisons took a big hit. They imploded. Geo Group lost 35%, okay? Basically the data that was announced. And Core Civic lost 25%, their stock value. Core Civic and Geo Group are two of the largest for-profit prison operators in the country. Since the election, the 2016 election, both stocks have surged. Both stocks have surged on renewed hopes the order would be rescinded. Geo Group hit a new record high, and shareholders of both stocks are very happy. The long-term contracts are still in place. Okay, so they go through and they show you okay, revenue and earnings. Okay, let's see. Okay, they go through, show you revenue and earnings, all that. All right, take a look at that article. There was also one from Yahoo News that dealt with this as well. Prison stocks soar under Trump as Jeff Sessions okays private jails. Then what they did was they gave contracts to CoreCivic and Geo Group to house migrants coming to the country. They gave them lucrative contracts. Okay. There was a article from, let me see. There's another one from, there was one from NBCnews.com that dealt with this as well. Okay, this is the one I was looking for right here. Let me show you this. Now, this is one they picked up from Reuters. Reuters.com, one of the three major news wires. This is from February 23rd, 2017. This is his little weasel. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who cheered the gutting of the 1965 Voting Rights Act in 2013 with Shelby County versus Holder, U.S. Supreme Court case, Shelby County versus Holder, which struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which weakened Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. U.S. reverses Obama-era move to phase out private prisons. The U.S. Justice Department has reversed an order by the Obama administration to phase out the use of private contractors to run federal prisons. In a memo made public on Thursday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said the Obama policy impaired the government's ability to meet future needs of the federal prison system. The Obama administration said in August 2016 it planned a gradual phase out of private prisons by letting contracts expire or by scaling them back to a level consistent with recent declines. Pay attention to this. Or scale them back to a level consistent with recent declines in the U.S. prison population, because the U.S. prison population declined each of the 8 years President Obama was in office. It said privately operated prisons were less safe. This is what the Obama administration said. Privately operated prisons were less safe and a poor substitute for government-run facilities. The Obama administration memorandum changed long-standing policy and practice and impaired the Bureau's ability to meet the future needs of the federal penal system. Therefore, I direct the Bureau to return to its previous approach, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III said in a letter dated Tuesday. Okay, so read the rest of this here, okay? And then there are also articles that talk about how the stock price surged in these private prisons when this move was made. All right, now, there's also a piece from the Washington Post by Monique Judge on this as well. Another thing that they did was this dealt with oversight of police, because there were about 24 investigations into the patterns and practices of police departments under the Obama-Biden administration. And there was one under the Trump administration. Let's look at this one here from the Washington Post. This deals with Justice Department ends program scrutinizing local police forces. Justice Department ends program scrutinizes local police forces. And I'm going to come back to the economy in just a second. I'm not finished with the economy. Okay, but I have all these articles here, so we're going to go through and look at all of them. How's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Justice Department ends program scrutinizing local police forces. This is from September 15th, 2017. This is the first year of the Trump administration, Trump-Pence administration. This is by Devlin Barrett for the Washington Post. Okay. An arm of the Justice Department said Friday it would roll back Obama-era efforts to investigate local police departments and issue public reports about their failings. This is under Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, Donald Trump's first attorney general. Now, these same policies continued under Attorney General William Barr, who is Donald Trump's second attorney general. Both of these two men were against criminal justice reform, both Jeff Sessions and William Barr. An arm of the Justice Department said Friday it would roll back Obama-era efforts to investigate local police departments and issue public reports about their failings, another way in which the Trump administration is trying to adopt a tough pro-police stance. The changes were announced by the department's Office of Community-Oriented Public Services, or COPS, which is halting a years-long effort begun in the previous administration, begun in the Obama administration, to investigate and publicize the shortcomings of police departments. This is what the Obama administration was doing. Within the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division has for decades conducted quote unquote pattern or practice probes of troubled police departments to determine whether there are systemic problems that require a court-appointed monitor to correct these problems. In recent years, however, the COPS office had gradually expanded to do something similar, issuing public reports about problems it found in individual departments. On Friday, the Justice Department signaled it would leave such work to the Civil Rights Division and that the COPS office would return to its roots, advising police departments on best practices, offering training, and becoming more collaborative. But Jeff Sessions took a hands-off approach to policing, so there was only one investigation into police departments under the Trump-Pence administration. Attorney General Jeff Sessions called the move a course correct to ensure that resources go to agencies that require assistance rather than expensive, wide-ranging investigative assessments that go beyond the scope of technical assistance and support. Okay, read the rest of this article here. Justice Department ends program scrutinizing local police departments. Now, I want to go to the people talk about Trump and the economy, and that's why they voted for Donald Trump, right? Candace Owens says she's going to vote for Donald Trump in 2024 because everyone was doing better under Trump. The economy was better. I guess she's talking about before COVID hit. We're going to talk about when COVID hit also. But I want to go back to May 9th, 2017. May 9th, 2017. And there's a good article from TheAHNShow because it wasn't the economy that caused largely white people to vote for Donald Trump. It was what's called cultural anxiety and the fear of the browning of America. Okay. Now there were studies that were done on this. We talked about this here on the African History Network show when these stories came out. This is one of the best ones. This is from TheAtlantic.com. TheAtlantic.com, May 9th, 2017. How many people saw this article? It was cultural. See, they want me to, this is your last free article. They want me to sign up for another subscription. I have so many subscriptions to news publications because I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. So I have subscriptions to Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Time Magazine, Britannica.com, National Geographic. I pay them each month. So I ain't trying to get, I'm not trying to pay for more subscriptions. It was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. It was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. And if you have any questions, you can post your questions here also. We'll try to answer some of your questions. A new study finds that fear of societal change, not economic pressure, motivated votes for the president among non-salaried workers without college degrees. They're largely talking about white people, okay, especially white men. This was the fear of the browning of America and the fear that by 2043, white people would be a minority population in this country. They're being fed fear by Fox News. They're being fed fear by Fox News. They're being fed fear by Newsmax. They're being fed fear by conservative talk radio. And they're being fed fear of the browning of America and what's going to happen to you when you become a minority population in this country. So now you have the Trump campaign and Trump allies talking about white people are the real ones who are hurt by racism. And they're talking about racism against white people, things like this. They're tapping into white racial grievance, just like they did in 2016. A new study finds that a fear of societal change, not economic pressure, motivated votes for the president among non-salaried workers without college degrees. All right, this is by Emma Green, May 9th, 2017. White Americans carried Donald Trump to the White House. He won college-educated white voters by a 4-point margin over Hillary Clinton, according to exit polls. But his real victory was among members of the white working class. His real victory was among members of the white working class. Twice as many of these voters cast their ballots for the president as for Hillary Clinton. Now, what's really interesting is that Donald Trump is against unions. Okay. When General Motors and Chrysler were trying to get a bailout from the federal government, Donald Trump was saying that the federal government should let General Motors and Chrysler go bankrupt. And he said that those automakers should move their plants to the South where they don't have unions, and the workers would be forced to pay whatever the automakers are going to pay them. This is what Donald Trump said. People, you had these white people, especially non-college educated hourly workers, who were saying they were voting for Trump for economic reasons. No. It was racial grievance. It was racial anxiety. This is why they voted for Trump. Because he was against, with him being against unions, he's against you actually getting raises. He's against you being able to negotiate to get raises. In the wake of Trump's surprise win, some journalists, scholars, and political strategists argued that economic anxiety drove these Americans to Trump. But new analysis of post-election survey data conducted by the Public Region Research Institute and the Atlantic.com, Atlantic publication, found something different. Evidence suggests financially troubled voters in the white working class were more likely to prefer Clinton over Trump. Evidence suggests financially troubled voters in the white working class were more likely to prefer Clinton over Trump. Besides partisan affiliation, it was cultural anxiety, feeling like a stranger in America, supporting the deportation of immigrants, and hesitating about educational investment that best predicted support for Trump. The data adds to the public's mosaic, like understanding of the 2016 election. It suggests Trump's most powerful message Trump's most powerful message, at least among some Americans, was about defending the country's putative culture, because this message seems to have resonated so deeply with voters. Trump's policies, speeches, and eventual re-election may depend on their perception of how well he fulfills it. Okay, so read the rest of this article. You're dealing with cultural anxiety, okay, and the browning of America, and the feeling that you're losing your America, you're losing American culture. You got all these black people, you got all these brown people, and they're going to take your jobs, okay? They're going to rape your wife. They're going to kill your children. This is the fear Trump tapped into. Now, people may say, well, we need immigration reform. I agree with that. Why did Trump just kill the strongest immigration bill that would have passed in 30 years? That bill was led by Senator John Langford, Republican, a conservative Republican from Oklahoma, led this fight for this immigration reform. And the bill, President Biden said he would sign the bill. Now, you had a lot of progressive Democrats who were against the bill. Biden said he would sign it. Langford said, even if Republicans take back control of the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2024, you're not going to get a stronger bill. Trump put pressure on Republicans to kill the bill because he wants to run on immigration in 2024 to help him get reelected. If it's such a problem that you claim it is, and fentanyl is coming across the border, okay, and migrants are coming across and a small portion are killing Americans, things like this, why wouldn't you want the bill passed to stop that? Let's continue. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. How's everybody doing? If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Well, I'm on Saturdays, not Sundays yet. We have a new Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So you can go right here to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Scroll down. Next class is April 13th, April 20th, April 27th. And we're going to have one May 4th also. Okay. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did Saturday. We had a great class Saturday, April 6th. The class lesson plan for all the class sessions is right here. So you can read the class lesson plan. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. There are 200 slides that I put together, over 200 slides. There are 80 to 100 articles that we reference, 15 books. I show you excerpts of the book on the screen, so you don't have to buy any of these books if you don't want to. They're great additions to your library if you don't already have them. We'll look at excerpts of interviews I've done with many of our scholars, Professor James Small, Professor Kabahai Walter Kamene, Tony Browder, Ranoko Rashidi, etc. Okay, and you can download the class lesson plan here as well. We have you scroll down, we have our PayPal and Cash App information here also. Okay, this is our Cash App tag $ the AHN Show SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael, shows our picture here. These are some other these other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. I'm still trying to get shut down. You click on this link, it takes you to our QR code here for Cash App. Okay, and we have a link for PayPal also. All right. So let's continue. There was another piece from the nation.com. From the nation.com. Economic anxiety didn't make people vote Trump. Racism did. Okay. And Isaiah said, great information. Thanks, Isaiah. Thanks for watching. All right. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Let's look at this quickly. Then I'm going to show you some slides from the presentation that I did in 2017 dealing with the Trump administration, African-American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Because it gets deeper into this, and it deals with different aspects of policies from the Obama administration that Trump reversed. And a lot of us don't know about this. And a lot of the Black social media disinformation agents out here are not going to tell you this either. Okay, let's look at this one. Is this article still up? Hold on. Okay, economic anxiety. Let's try to find this. Economic anxiety didn't make people vote Trump. Racism did. Looks like they changed the link at the. So if you Google that topic, a number of articles are going to come up. TheNation.com, The Intercept, because these studies were coming out in 2017. Okay, to look at what happened in the 2016 presidential election. Now, this piece is from May 8th, 2017. May 8th, 2017. Okay, I think they want me to get a subscription also. Okay, this is TheNation.com. All right, let's see here. All right, let's look at this one. New data provided a compelling answer to this vexing question. New data provide a compelling answer to this vexing question. Was Donald Trump elected because of racism or economic anxiety? Let me try to close out this damn video. Was Donald Trump elected because of racism or economic anxiety? Few questions about the 2016 election have generated more analysis. As we've previously written, it is clear racism propelled Trump to the Republican nomination. But how did the racial resentment that powered Trump's ascent differ from the support for Republican candidates in prior elections? Now, keep in mind, the January 6, 2021 insurrection that Donald Trump led was fueled by racial resentment. And I find it interesting. Candace Owens is going to support Donald Trump in 2024 and just skip over the January 6, 2021 insurrection, which was an attempt to invalidate the vote of 81 million people who voted for Biden and Harris, including 16.9 million African Americans, so Donald Trump can stay in office. But how did the racial resentment that powered Trump's ascent differ from the support for Republican candidates in prior elections? And what was the relative importance of economic peril to voting in 2016 compared to several different types of racism and racial animus exhibited by voters? The answers can be found in the comprehensive American National Election Studies pre- and post-election survey of over 4,000 respondents. Now, who has never seen this article before? And the people you watch on social media never showed this to you. Over 4,000 respondents, which we analyzed to explore the impact of racism and economic peril on 2016 voting behavior. The results are clear and move a long way towards settling this debate. Let's scroll down. Our analysis shows Trump accelerated a realignment in the electorate around racism across several different measures of racial animus. Our analysis shows Trump accelerated a realignment in the electorate around racism across several different measures of racial animus, and that it helped him win. By contrast, we found little evidence to suggest individual economic distress benefited Trump. The American political system is sorting so that racial progressivism and economic progressivism are aligned in the Democratic Party, and racial conservatism and economic conservatism are aligned in the Republican Party. All right. So read the rest of this piece, and it goes on to say, racial resentment measures dog whistle. Racial resentment measures dog whistle or colorblind forms of racism, such as the belief that Black people need to simply try harder to be successful in America, or that generations of discrimination do not hold Black Americans back. However, some have criticized the concept of racial resentment and the various questions designed to measure it as essentially equating conservative beliefs and racial neutral principles with racism and racial animus. We believe that such concerns are exaggerated and that racial resentment captures an important dimension of racial animus. Nonetheless, in order to speak to such concerns, we created a second measure we call Black influence animosity, derived from questions that more directly examine voters' views about whether the U.S. government favors Black people over white people and how much influence Black people have in U.S. politics. Not only is there a fear of the browning of America, there's a fear of African Americans and non-white people gaining more political power. And what would these people do when they have more political power? Will they use this political power to hurt white people? So in 2016, a lot of white Americans saw Donald Trump with all of his flaws, saw Donald Trump as the great white hope. They saw him as their last resort. They saw him as a means to an end. Because I watched, so I was doing radio on 910 AM Superstation WFDF in 2016. I was on I was on the morning show on Thursdays, Wake Up with Steve Hood, and I was doing the African History Network show on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? And I watched numerous campaign speeches that Donald Trump gave, as well as interviews that Trump gave. And I looked at focus groups. I've looked at interviews with focus groups of people who were Trump supporters, things like this, right? And overwhelmingly, people were saying this election is about the courts. They said this is about the U.S. Supreme Court. They said this is about the federal courts. Okay. And what white people saw that they were having declining birth rates in many states, and that by the year 2043, they will become a minority population in this country. So there's an effort to get greater control of the U.S. Supreme Court and the federal court, because the judicial branch of the federal government interprets law from the legislative branch of the federal government and interprets policies from the executive branch of the federal government. Okay, so they wanted to control the federal bench and the U.S. Supreme Court for the next 25, 30 years, because these are lifetime appointments. Okay, these are lifetime appointments. Let's go to, and this is what happened. So Donald Trump gets 3 Supreme Court justices confirmed. Okay, and he got 226 federal judges confirmed, largely ultra conservative judges. Okay, Isaiah said great information. All right. Thanks, Isaiah. You can post your comments here. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. I want to go to some of the slides here from a presentation that I did back in 2017 dealing with this topic. What caused the Donald Trump popularity? Now, Trump was a backlash to 2 terms of President Barack Obama. He was in any perceived advancement that African Americans made under the Obama administration. He was a backlash to Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement, backlash to holding police officers accountable. He was a backlash to the rebellions in Baltimore and Ferguson. Okay. He ran on the platform of law and order, which was a throwback to Richard Nixon, 1968. Richard Nixon was a backlash to the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, largely affirmative action as well, in the rebellions taking place across the country. Xenophobia, white supremacy, racism. This is what Trump ran on in 2016. He's running on the same thing in 2024, but it's even worse now. And the number one news source for Trump supporters in 2016 was Fox News. Okay. Now, this piece right here from AtlantaBlackStar.com, June 6, 2016, recent studies show support for Trump is rooted in animosity and resentment towards blacks, immigrants, and Muslims. Rooted in animosity towards blacks, immigrants, and Muslims. 2 scientific studies may have just answered this burning question. According to the Washington Post, 2 new studies revealed that racial anxiety is the driving factor of support for Donald Trump. Now, this was before the election. This is about 5 months before the November 2016 election. The report also confirms that economic concerns don't have as much influence as previously thought. So this is looking at the data before Trump is elected. And the 2 articles I just cited looked at it after he was elected. And they both found that, wait a second, economic reasons are not the real reason that these white people voted for Donald Trump. Is fear of the browning of America. Okay. And animosity and resentment towards African Americans, immigrants, and Muslims. And remember, Donald Trump imposed a Muslim ban on people coming from 7 Muslim countries. Remember that? The Muslim ban? One study found that, quote, those who express more resentment toward African Americans, those who think the word, quote unquote, violent describes Muslims well, and those who believe President Obama is a Muslim have much more positive views of Trump compared to Hillary Clinton. There was another article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, June 30th, 2016, called Your Racism is Showing. Your Racism is Showing. New poll reveals Trump supporters more likely to view blacks as violent, lazy, and unintelligent. More likely to view African Americans as violent, lazy, and unintelligent. Now, Roland Martin, last week, he did a deconstruction of Candace Owens, okay, and her interview on the Breakfast Club. Now, he did his after we did part 1 of ours, okay, but she was, I think it was on the deconstruction. She talked about how she never heard that it was a stereotype for black people to be lazy. I don't know where, let's just be honest. Candace Owens is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. She's dumb as a bag of rocks. But she has to be getting paid to say all this stupid stuff and tell all these lies, because you can't be that stupid for free. She has to be getting paid. You never heard that it's a stereotype for African Americans to be lazy? I guess you never heard it's a stereotype for African Americans to eat watermelon either, huh? Okay, so somebody just sent me a text message. Okay. All right. Your racism is showing. New poll reveals Trump supporters more likely to view blacks as violent, lazy, and unintelligent. According to a recent poll by Reuters Ipsos, Trump supporters are more likely to view African Americans as criminal, unintelligent, lazy, and violent compared to voters who backed his Republican rivals in the primaries, Reuters reports. Now, somebody get this information to Candace Owens, because she's just out here lost and confused, doesn't know any of this. Okay. So, you know, somebody get this information to her. And then I cited the article. Now, this was all in the presentation I did back in 2017. Okay. It was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump, TheATlantic.com. Let's look at this here on voter suppression. Voter suppression was big in the 2016 presidential election. Voter suppression coming from the Trump administration. This is a good piece here from TheNation.com, May 11th, 2017. Trump Commission on Election Integrity will lead to mass voter suppression. Now, this is after he won through the Electoral College, because most of us don't understand how the Electoral College works. Voter suppression is a much bigger problem than voter fraud. The 2016 election was the first in 50 years without the full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and 14 states had new voter restrictions in effect for the first time. On Tuesday, I wrote about, now this is an article, if I remember correctly, this was Ari Berman, who was writing for TheNation.com back then. He's now with Mother Jones. Ari Berman wrote a series of articles dealing with the voter suppression taking place in the 2016 presidential election. On Tuesday, I wrote about a new study finding that 200,000 votes could have been suppressed by Wisconsin's strict voter ID law in 2016. In comparison, Wisconsin did not present a single case of voter impersonation in court that the law would have stopped. Go read that one. Okay. Now, let's see here. We'll come back to voter suppression. I want to stay trying to deal with one subject at a time. There was a bunch dealing with voter suppression, but what I want to do, I want to go to let's deal with this here, Jeff Sessions. So we're talking about Jeff Sessions. Yeah, this one right here. This article, Attorney General Jeff Sessions charts course back to long drug sentences, NBCnews.com. Attorney Jeff Sessions redeclared the war on drugs. Now, remember, the war on drugs started not with the 1994 crime bill, as we talked about in part one of this discussion back on March 24th. It started with Richard Nixon's war on drugs, June 17, 1971. And the U.S. prison population quadrupled from 1970 to 1993. It goes from about 300,000 in 1970 to 1.3 million in 1993. Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III instructed federal prosecutors on Friday, May 12, 2017 now he was sworn in February 2017. Friday, May 12, 2017, to take the most aggressive approach possible against federal criminal defendants for low-level drug offenses. To take the most aggressive approach possible against federal criminal defendants for low-level drug offenses. He ordered them to stop seeking leniency for low-level drug offenders and to start seeking the toughest possible penalties. That's what federal authorities used to do when the war on drugs fueled the passage of mandatory minimum sentencing laws. But under former President Barack Obama, the Justice Department tried to rein in the use of those statutes, which advocates say were used disproportionately against minorities and led to massive prison overcrowding. The policy change will result in lengthier prison sentences for low-level drug offenders and likely reverse a recent drop in the federal prison population. Read this article from NBCnews.com. Attorney General Sessions charts course back to long drug sentences. Okay, because once again, the U.S. prison population dropped each year of the Obama-Biden administration, and the war on drugs was declining. It ramped back up under Trump. And I want to pull up this piece from NBCnews.com because I think I have it bookmarked. Attorney General Jeff Sessions charts. Let's look at this because I have thousands of articles bookmarked here. Let's see, pull up this one. I want to show you the actual article. Just a second here. Where is this here? What is this? Let's see if I can find it. Okay, we just Google. I can't find me in the future. Okay, I can't find the exact article. Okay, just Google that one. All right, now let's continue here. U.S. prison population drops to its lowest rate in 20 years. This was Newsweek.com, 2015. I mean, Newsweek.com was said to be December 29th, 2016. The U.S. prison population exceeded 1.5 million in 2015. Newsweek reported on December 29th, 2016 that the U.S. prison population fell the most in almost 4 decades to 1.53 million inmates in 2015. This is under President Barack Obama, resulting in the lowest rate of incarceration in a generation, the Department of Justice said on Thursday. The drop has been driven by changes in federal and state correction policies that include drug treatment programs and the sentencing of fewer nonviolent drug offenders to federal prisons, the department said in its year-end report on prison populations. Now, Jeff Sessions reversed a lot of this, okay? But also, there was a epic drug lab scandal. NBC News had an article on this. A mass dismissal of wrongful convictions, perhaps the biggest ever, unfolded in a Boston courthouse on Tuesday as prosecutors in 7 Massachusetts counties dropped more than 23,000 low-level drug cases tainted by the work of a rogue lab chemist. There was a piece, I think this was 2017, epic drug lab scandal results in more than 20,000 convictions dropped. Now, one of the things that Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III did, and a lot of people don't know about this, there was a commission that President Barack Obama put in place to, it was a partnership started in 2013 with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And this was designed to enhance the practice and improve the reliability of forensic science, because faulty science was getting people falsely convicted. And we were disproportionately the victims of that. African Americans were disproportionately the victims of that. Okay, here's what happened. The Republican war on science has come to the U.S. Department of Justice with the decision by Attorney Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III to eliminate the National Commission on Forensic Sciences, the NCFS, the National Commission on Forensic Sciences. The commission was started by President Barack Obama in 2013 in partnership with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST, at the U.S. Department of Commerce to enhance the practice and improve the reliability of forensic science. The commission includes forensic science service providers on the federal, state, and local level, research scientists and academics, law enforcement, judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and other stakeholders, according to its website. The purpose of the NCFS is to ensure the reliability of forensic science so that innocent people are not sent to prison or put to death for crimes they did not commit. Hundreds, but more likely thousands of innocent people have been condemned due to junk science and unsound forensic evidence and techniques. The importance of this Obama-era initiative was underscored when in 2015, the FBI conducted a review of 3,000 cases involving microscopic hair samples and discovered that its analysts provided erroneous testimony 96% of the time. But Attorney General Jeff Sessions didn't think this commission was necessary, so he disbanded it. Read this article from April 15, 2017, AtlantaBlackStar.com. AG Sessions forensic panel helps keep innocent people in prison unnecessarily. All right, now, let me see which, okay. And for more information dealing with Richard Nixon's war on drugs, read the piece from Harper's Weekly, April 2016, Legalize It All, How to Win the War on Drugs. This is Richard Nixon with his domestic policy advisor at the time, in 1972, John Ehrlichman. And John Ehrlichman spilled the beans in an interview that journalist Dan Baum, B-A-U-M, did with Ehrlichman in 1994, and it was talked about in this 2016 article. TheRoot.com has an article dealing with the piece from Harper's Weekly called Former Nixon Aide Claims War on Drugs Invented to Suppress Black People. That's from March 22nd, 2016 from TheRoot.com. All right, now, I want to look at some more of these articles to provide this evidence. And I want you to go read these as well. Don't take my word for this. Proper documentation ends all conversations. If we look quickly here, April 2017, Washington Post. Racism motivated Trump voters more than authoritarianism. This is 2017. I just want to look at this briefly, and then we're going to look at some other topics here, because this is just a sample of the information that I have. Okay, just on Trump alone, I have hundreds of articles. This is just a sample. Racism motivated Trump voters more than authoritarianism. This is analysis by Thomas Wood, Washington Post, April 17th, 2017. During the 2016 presidential campaign, many observers wondered exactly what motivated voters most. Was it income, authoritarianism, racial views? Let the analysis begin. Last week, the widely respected 2016 American National Election Study was released, sending political scientists into a flurry of data modeling and chart making. The American National Election Study has been conducted since 1948, at first through in-person surveys and now also online, with about 1,200 nationally representative respondents answering some questions for about 80 minutes. This incredibly rich public-funded data source allows us to put elections into historical perspective, examining how much each factor affected the vote in 2016 compared with other recent elections. Okay, so they go through and talk about the rich, the poor, and in between, and did racism affect voting? Let's skip down to this here. Did racism affect voting? Did racism affect the voting? Many observers debated how important Trump's racial appeals were to his voters. During the campaign, Trump made overt racial comments with seemingly little electoral penalty. Could the unusual 2016 race have further affected Americans' racial attitudes? Okay, so then they go through and talk about that as well. So you can read the rest of that. All right, but that backs up like what other studies were showing. Racism motivated Trump's voters more than authoritarianism. Okay, that's from the Washington Post. All right, now let me put all that back together. Let's look at just a second. Let me check my list here. She talked about Donald Trump slashing regulations. She talked about Candace Owens talked about Donald Trump slashing regulations when he first came in office. Okay. That is true. And regulations are largely put in place to protect people. Okay. Whether you have regulations coming from the health department, regulations coming from the Environmental Protection Agency, which started under Richard Nixon, things of this nature, right? Let's look at, let's look at this article here from New York Times. The Trump administration is reversing nearly 100 environmental rules. Here's a full list, okay? Now, when you talk about reversing environmental rules, that is ultimately going to hurt a lot non-white people, especially African Americans. Let's look at this here. Now, this is an analysis. This is last updated October 15th, 2020. New York Times. The Trump administration is reversing nearly 100 environmental rules. Here's the full list. 72 were completely reversed. 27 were in progress. A total of 99 total rollbacks. Okay. Over 4 years in office, the Trump administration has dismantled major climate policies and rolled back many voters and rolled back many more rules governing clean air, water, wildlife, and toxic chemicals. Pay attention to this. While other administrations have emphasized cutting regulations, calling them burdensome to industries like coal, oil, and gas, the scope of actions under Donald Trump is fundamentally different, said Hannah V. Vizcarra, a staff attorney at Harvard Law School's Environmental and Energy Law program. In a New York Times analysis based on research from Harvard Law School, Columbia Law School, and other sources, counts more than 70 environmental rules and regulations officially reversed, revoked, or otherwise rolled back under Donald Trump. Another 26 rollbacks are in progress. Now, these are policies that were either put in place by the Obama-Biden administration, or they were policies that were held over from previous administrations, okay, and held over by the Obama-Biden administration. You have air pollution and emissions, 21 policies overturned. Okay, drilling and extraction, 11 policies overturned. Infrastructure and planning, 12 policies overturned. Now, remember, every other week was infrastructure week under the Trump administration. He couldn't get an infrastructure bill passed. Biden got a bipartisan $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill passed in November 2021. Water pollution. Okay, six policies overturned on water pollution. Toxic substances and safety, 6 overturned. They go through and break all this stuff down. The bulk of the rollbacks identified by the New York Times have been carried out by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which has weakened Obama-era limits on planet-warming carbon dioxide emissions from power plants and from cars and trucks, removed protections for more than half the nation's wetlands, and withdrawn the legal justification for restricting mercury emissions from power plants. At the same time, the Interior Department has worked to open up more land for oil and gas leasing by limiting wildlife protections and weakening environmental requirements for projects. Okay, read the rest of this here. Okay, now there's numerous articles dealing with this. This is a deep analysis right here from the New York Times. The Trump administration is reversing nearly 100 environmental rules. Here's the full list. Now, for years, Republicans denied climate change. Okay, for years, Republicans denied climate change. I wonder why. Then you have this one here. This is an updated one. Let me see. Who is this by? They got an updated one from January 20th, 2021. Because the first one I showed you was last updated October 15th, 2020. Okay. And then this one here, this is called the Trump administration rolled back nearly. Okay. This is an updated one here. Last updated January 20th, 2021. So you can look at this also. The Trump administration rolled back more than 100 environmental rules. Here's the full list. Updated January 20th, 2021. 112 total rollbacks. All right, now there was a, let's look at this here. I'm looking at these articles I have up. Okay, there's a good piece from AmericanProgress.org, Centers for American Progress. Communities of color bear the brunt of Trump's anti-environmental agenda. So when we talk about removing regulations, now sometimes there's good reasons to remove regulations. Sometimes regulations can be duplicative, okay? You can have similar regulations that do the same thing, so you can eliminate some but keep others, okay? That allows, protections to stay in place. Others are being removed by lobbyists, okay, on behalf of corporations. And when you remove these regulations, it does greater harm to marginalized communities. February 27, 2020, communities of color bear the brunt of Trump's anti-environmental agenda. By weakening air and water protections and refusing to address climate change. But pay attention to this. By weakening air and water protections and refusing to address climate change, the Trump administration is exacerbating environmental and health hazards in communities of color. Okay, now once again, this is from February 27th, 2020. So that was the last year of the Trump administration. President Donald Trump has claimed that from his first day in office, his administration, quote, has made it a top priority to ensure that America has among the very cleanest air and cleanest water on the planet. In reality, it has done the exact opposite, deliberately dismantling the United States' existing framework of environmental protections that safeguard the country's water, air, and public health. Due to a history of systemic racism and segregation, low-income communities and people of color have been burdened with higher levels of pollution in their backyards. Due to a history of systemic racism and segregation, low-income communities and people of color, especially African Americans, have been burdened with higher levels of pollution in their backyards. These groups are disproportionately vulnerable to the increasingly devastating weather events occurring as a result of unchecked climate change caused by greenhouse gas emissions. So this is, see, for so long, Earth Day and climate change, a lot of times people perceive that as something that white progressives were concerned about. No, Black people need to be concerned about this too, because we're going to absorb the brunt of the harm from climate change. Due to a history of systemic racism and segregation, low-income communities and people of color have been burdened with higher levels of pollution in their backyards. These groups are disproportionately vulnerable to the increasingly devastating weather events occurring as a result of unchecked climate change caused by greenhouse gas emissions. Historic exclusion from political decision-making has only exacerbated this reality. further impeding these communities' ability to prepare for and respond to burgeoning climate risks. This column lists examples of the Trump administration's notable anti-environmental actions in 3 areas. 1, weakening air and water protections. 2, threatening community health and safety. And 3, refusal to act on climate change. Refusal to act on climate change. Now, under President Biden, you had the Inflation Reduction Act, which is basically the first major bill to start addressing climate change. Now, it also uses stories of communities across the country who have been deeply affected by these environmental policies to illustrate the disproportionate harm to specific communities of color. These groups are facing the most severe repercussions of the Trump administration's continued environmental rollbacks, okay? Weakening protections for air and water, removed protections for one third of U.S. drinking water sources. The Trump administration has gutted protections for clean water by weakening the Clean Water Act, finalizing a so-called dirty water rule, and delaying action to protect against toxic chemicals in drinking water. Okay. Additionally, under Trump's Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, communities of color in particular are seeing slow and inadequate enforcement of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Okay. Weakened coal ash restrictions as well. Proposed loosening restrictions on toxic mercury pollution. You read the rest of this stuff here. Okay. Gutted the Clean Power Plan. All right. Now, number 2, I'm going to skip over some of this. Let's see, scroll down. 2, threatening community health and safety. Threatening community health and safety. Under Trump, his policies undid climate and community protections under the National Environmental Policy Act, okay, the NEPA. Okay, so read over that. They go through and explain that. Declined to ban toxic pesticides. The Trump administration rejected a ban on chlorpyrifos, chlorpyrifos, a pesticide that is linked to brain damage in children, which Environmental Protection Agency scientists recommended after studying the chemical. The EPA scientists recommended a ban on this chemical. The Trump administration rejected a ban on this chemical that is a pesticide linked to brain damage in children. The administration's refusal to ban this product will negatively affect agricultural workers, the majority of which are Hispanic and or Latinx. Okay, so continue to read the rest of this here. Okay, I don't have time to get through all of this, but this is deep. Communities of color bear the brunt of Trump's anti-environmental agenda. This is from February 27, 2020. All right, now I want to check, because I made a list of all these things to talk about. Okay, I made a list here of all these things to talk about, and I have all these articles. So I'm going to go through, and we did with regulations. I want to go through and check this off. Okay, so Candace Owens talked about how both Republicans and Democrats were giving away free money, and it was incentivizing people not to work. And she said they should have kept the government open and let people go to work, things like this. This is during COVID-19. Okay. More nonsense, because largely the reason why people didn't want to go to work is because people didn't want to catch COVID and die. And governors of states, like the governor of Michigan, had to shut down different sectors of society and shut down certain businesses to slow the spread of COVID-19 because of the lack of leadership coming from the White House and lack of a viable plan coming from the White House. Okay. So let's look at something here. She talked about trillions of dollars being given away, things like this. Let's look at this article from CBSNews.com. The Senate has passed a $2 trillion coronavirus relief package. Here's what's in it. Now, this is from March 26, 2020. Let's pull this up, because we're going to look at why these packages had to be passed. Okay? Why these packages had to be passed. And then I found it interesting. She said they were giving them away money for museums, things like this, right? Now, she didn't talk about PPP loans so people could like keep their businesses open. She ain't talked about the Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who got hundreds of thousands of dollars in PPP loans, right? She ain't talk about them. So let's look at this here. Let's close out some of these ads. The Senate has passed a $2 trillion coronavirus relief package. Here's what's in it. This is from March 26, 2020, Melissa Quinn, CBSNews.com. So they talk about the Senate passes bill late Wednesday night, $2 trillion coronavirus relief package designed to support the U.S. economy. This was designed to save the U.S. economy. Okay. It was approved almost 24 hours after Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced on the Senate floor shortly after 1 a.m. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Now, President Trump was pleased, tweeting earlier Thursday, 96-0 in the United States Senate. Congratulations, America. Right now. Keep in mind, he mishandled the whole coronavirus pandemic. He didn't read his presidential daily briefings, right? There's stories about this. Didn't read his presidential daily briefings. So he totally mishandled this, right? Now, if we look at, I want to get through all these ads here. What was in the bill? Here's what's in the $2 trillion package, the largest in U.S. history. Direct payments of $1,200 to most individuals making up to $75,000 a year, or $2,400 for couples making up to $150,000 a year. Each dependent child increases the amount by an additional $500. Okay, this was so people can pay their bills and buy food, because businesses were being shut down to slow the spread of COVID-19 so that hospitals will not continue to be overran with COVID-19 patients, and they have to turn away people who are coming to the hospital trying to seek preventive care. Emergency rooms are being overran. Doctors are being stressed out, all of this. So you had to shut down sectors of society. People had to stay at home. Okay. Expanded unemployment benefits that boost the maximum benefit by $600 per week and provided laid off workers their full pay for 4 months. Eligibility. So people were able to get this aid because they still had to pay bills, right? So their lights wouldn't be turned off, so they wouldn't be evicted, so they could buy food. $367 billion in loans for small businesses. So small businesses could pay their bills. And some small businesses that may operate maybe online or something like that, so they can stay in business. They may have to shut down somewhat, may operate in a restricted manner, but businesses still had to pay bills as well. So they can still pay bills. $150 billion for state and local governments. State and local governments had to buy things like the protection equipment. Okay, state and local governments had to continue to operate. $130 billion for hospitals. Hospitals had to operate. Hospitals had to buy more personal protection equipment, etc. $500 billion in loans for larger industries, including $25 billion for passenger airlines, $4 billion for carriers, $3 billion for aviation contractors, and $17 billion for businesses critical to maintaining national security. Creation of an oversight board and inspector general to oversee loans to large companies. Now, there was some mismanagement here. Yeah. And there were people who took advantage of it, and people being prosecuted for getting millions of dollars in loans fraudulently, and they should be prosecuted. Measure prohibiting companies owned by Donald Trump and his family from receiving federal relief. $25 million for the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. Okay. Now, I think this is what Candace Owens was talking about. She skipped over all the money for businesses, $150 billion for state and local governments, $367 billion in loans for small businesses, $130 billion for hospitals, for hospitals to continue to operate. Okay. Skipped over all that out of a $2 trillion bill and focused on millions of dollars for museums, things like this. $400 million for election security grants. Okay. Coming up for the 2020 presidential election. $400 million for election security grants. Read the rest of this here. Go do more research on this. Because this was nonsense she was talking about. And nobody fact-checked her on the Breakfast Club. I don't understand that. Nobody provided this evidence. Now, the name of this article, the Senate has passed a $2 trillion coronavirus relief package. Here's what's in it. And once again, if we go back, I want you to see this, okay? This is not to beat up on the Breakfast Club that's owned by iHeartRadio. This is not to beat up on them, but it's important for people to really understand this. Now, the Breakfast Club has had on Vivek Ramaswamy, largely didn't push back on him. They had on Nikki Haley, largely didn't push back on her. But so this is the video. It's been viewed 2.3 million times, March 21st, 2024. This is at the Breakfast Club, their YouTube channel. Okay. When you scroll down here, you look at all the people that work to produce the show. Executive producer Eddie F. Don't know why they don't show his last name. Senior video director Nick Ciafalo, video editor, social media manager Sydney Brown, producer Taylor Hayes, producer Brandon Tagoe, Tagoe, producer Samantha Wilson, board operator, writer producer, podcast producer. Nobody supplied y'all with facts to counter that nonsense you was talking about? See, I don't have people that work for me to do research. I don't have producers and all this. How the hell I know this and they don't? And they got these people working for them. And the Breakfast Club is owned by iHeartRadio. They're like the largest radio conglomerate in the goddamn country. And you allow Simple Simon ass nonsense like this to go out on your airwaves unchecked? All right. Let's go to, we got another one here. Okay, so we got that. And let's see here. We've got, I'm looking through these articles I have pulled up. Okay, we talked about that. We're going to get to January 6th here in just a minute. I'm looking through here, coronavirus stimulus package. What's in the corona unemployment insurance? Here's another article you can look at from the Washington Post. We'll look at the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan here in just a minute. The American Rescue Plan saved the U.S. economy. That's under the Biden-Harris administration. March 10th, 2021. Washington Post. Rachel Siegel. What's in Congress's $1.9 trillion COVID bill? Checks, unemployment insurance, and more. No Republicans in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate voted for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that saved the U.S. economy. I repeat, no Republicans in the House or the Senate, over 200 in the House and 50 in the Senate. Because remember, it was a 50-50 Senate, okay, under the first 2 years of Biden-Harris. No Republicans voted for this bill. You had Republicans saying, open up the schools, open up the schools. When it came time to fund opening the schools back up, hiring more teachers, paying for new ventilation systems so you can have less people in the classroom, to pay for the personal protection equipment and the masks and things like this. No Republicans voted for this bill. The House passed a $1.9 trillion stimulus plan Wednesday, marking a major Democratic legislative victory aimed at boosting the economy and ending the pandemic. The vast relief package known as the American Rescue Plan was approved on a 220 to 211 vote, almost entirely along party lines. President Biden is expected to sign the legislation on Friday. No Republicans voted for the bill. Legislation is $1,400 in stimulus checks to most Americans, extend unemployment insurance, all of this, right? And then for all the sexy reds out there, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution, power of the purse, the ability to tax and spend belongs to Congress, not the president. The president will sign off on a bill. But even under the Trump-Pence administration, Democrats made the stimulus package better, made the coronavirus packages better. And then that continued here. So Sexy Red is somebody that has no understanding of politics. If you saw the podcast interview she did where she said she wants Trump back in office because people are getting free money under the Trump administration, she's just totally clueless. And then you see the article recently, there was a high school that invited her to speak. I don't know why the hell you invite Sexy Red to speak at a high school. I don't. What? Let's not go to. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what I was actually about to say. But anyway, but what class would she teach? But and then she wasn't allowed to speak because they said she smelled like weed. Okay, who would think that Sexy Red would smell like weed? But that's a whole nother conversation. The package extends the existing $300 weekly unemployment benefit through September 6th, as well as provides tax breaks on $10,000 in unemployment benefits. Okay, $900 billion stimulus. The $900 billion stimulus package passed in December provided the unemployed an extra $300 per week in benefits. That program expires mid-March. Okay, let's look at what's in this bill here. Let's scroll down. Okay, the bill would send $1,400 stimulus checks on top of the $600 payments issued through the stimulus bill passed in December. Because remember, there was $600 in payments passed in December. That went out. And when Biden and Harris ran, they ran on $1,400 stimulus checks for a total of $2,000. Roughly $400 billion of the package will go toward another round of stimulus checks. Biden agreed to narrow eligibility for a new round of $1,400 payments to appease more moderate Democrats. Okay, you got that. Under legislation, most Americans will receive $3,000 a year for each child, ages 6 to 10, 17, ages 6 to 17, and $3,600 for each child under 6. That's a child tax credit. That's a child tax credit that was part of the American Rescue Plan that lifted 1 million African-American children out of poverty. That's a child tax credit right there. Okay, that's good. Aid to state and local governments. The package designates $350 billion for states, cities, tribal governments, and U.S. territories. Local government funding emerged as one of the top flashpoints in stimulus negotiations. Moderate Senate Democrats have pushed to redirect some of the funds to invest in the infrastructure and to expand the broadband network, broadband internet. Okay, so they had to hire more emergency responders, hire more government workers for state and local governments. There was all type of funding that was needed for state and local governments to operate. Okay, I can tell you right here in the city of Detroit, because Governor Gretchen Whitmer had to shut down a lot of businesses, including the 3 casinos here in the city of Detroit, Motor City Casino, Greektown, and MGM Grand. Those casinos generated $600,000 a day in taxes to the city of Detroit. Okay, that's how much they paid each day in taxes on average to the city of Detroit, $600,000. All right. When those casinos had to be shut down, the city of Detroit didn't have that tax money coming in. Therefore, Mayor Mike Duggan, who I didn't vote for any of the 3 times that he ran, by the way, Mayor Mike Duggan had to adjust the budget, and he had to cut something like $300 million from the city budget. They had to lay off people, things like that. They had to adjust for that. Okay. So you had $300 billion in funding for states and local governments. Federal Facing deep budget shortfalls, state and local governments have shed 1.3 million jobs since the pandemic began last year, a loss of more than 1 in 20 government jobs, according to a Washington Post analysis. All right. So there was funding to help with that. There was funding for schools to open back up as well. Pandemic response. Tens of billions of dollars will fund coronavirus testing and contact tracing, increasing the size of the public health workforce and funding vaccine distribution and supply chains. All right. So you had that as well. Housing assistance. The bill sets aside more than $20 billion in emergency rental assistance and other relief for the homeless. Another $10 billion goes to mortgage and home ownership assistance. There was a total of $46.5 billion in the American Rescue Plan for rental assistance and also assistance for landlords as well, because landlords still had to pay mortgages on properties, on rental properties that they had. There was $46.5 billion of resources in that. Okay, so people can pay their rent and things of this nature. School support. Once again, Republicans said, open the schools, open the schools, open the schools. When it came time to fund opening the schools, no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that allowed the schools to open back up. So keep in mind, the schools had to open back up, right? So people could send their children to schools, so people could go back to work. If you can't send your children to school and, you know, your children are too old for daycare, you're not going to be able to go back to work. The bill sets aside almost $130 billion to help kindergarten through 12th grade schools reopen. That money will go to improving ventilation systems, reducing classroom sizes, buying personal protective equipment, and implementing social distancing so you can slow down the spread of COVID-19. Because you don't want to open the schools back up and then COVID runs through and the children take it to school, give it to the teachers, give it to staff, they take it home and kills their family or puts their family in harm's way. They have to go to the hospital, have to stay at the hospital, intensive care. Colleges and other higher education institutions would receive almost $40 billion. That money could help support financial aid grants to prevent hunger, homelessness, or other challenges for students during the pandemic. Additional funds will go to child care providers through the Child Care and Development Block Grant Program. Why didn't Candace Owens talk about this on the Breakfast Club? Why didn't any of those people and producers and executive producers, and why didn't they bring this up? The bill also set aside $1 billion for the Head Start program, which provides early childhood education, health and nutrition services to low-income children and families. Aid for multi-employer pension plans. The bill includes an $86 billion bailout for failing pension plans. Democrats say the provision gives struggling pension plans enough money to pay hundreds of thousands of retirees their full pensions for the next few decades. Oh, you mean like retired black people? You mean like retired black people, like our parents and our grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like this? But the bailout has been criticized for having little to do with current health crisis, especially since many pension plans were on the verge of collapse well before the pandemic. They were able to get this in there to help save the pension plans. Because if pension plans collapse, guess what? That's going to hurt senior citizens. The bill provides $510 million for the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program. That money will support homeless services providers for overnight shelter, meals, 1 month's rent and mortgage assistance, and 1 month's utility payments. It expands the employee retention tax credit for startup companies and other businesses hit by the pandemic. The bill adds a $10 billion infrastructure program, to help local governments continue crucial capital projects. Okay, read the rest of this. For education funding, the bill sets aside $1.25 billion for summer enrichment, $1.25 billion for after-school programs, and $3 billion for education technology. I don't know why anybody didn't mention it. These things just perplex me. What's in Congress's $1.9 trillion COVID bill? Checks, unemployment insurance, and more. This is from March 10th, 2021, Washington Post. Read this article here. Things like that just go unchecked.